Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Emetophobia-Free podcast. Today we are joined again by the lovely Sam Marker. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful.
Fabulous. Now, Sam is here today because we receive lots of inquiries from people with diagnosed physical conditions who also have emetophobia. So, we're talking about things like IBS and Crohn's disease, and they wonder if this program will work for them because not only are they dealing with emetophobia, they've also got a diagnosed medical condition. And me and Sam were having an informal chat one day, and she just mentioned that she also has a diagnosed medical condition which has lots of symptoms that overlap with emetophobia that she also had during her time with emetophobia. So I thought, well, who better to come on and talk about this topic than Sam? So, Sam, over to you. Do you want to talk about the nervous system disorder that you have and how that impacted you with your emetophobia?
Sure, absolutely. So, the technical diagnosis is autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and it's kind of this umbrella that's generally saying, hey, your nervous system doesn't work right. So, it's a lot of weird things that I never really considered symptoms until I was having some more severe issues, and the doctors were like, "What about X, Y, and Z?" And I'm going, "Well, yeah, doesn't that happen to everybody?" And they said, no, that's not how your body's supposed to work. So
Right.
I have lots of dizziness, tingling, pinpricks in my hands and feet,
Mm-hmm.
lots of fatigue, digestive issues, IBS, digestive upset. So your autonomic nervous system controls your heart rate, your blood flow, blood pressure, your vestibular system, your digestion, temperature regulation. So when I was having panic attacks and I got those tinglings in my hands and feet, that carried over after my panic attacks were gone, and I would kind
Right.
of be like, well, what's happening? Like, why is this? I'm not anxious. Why is this happening now? Lots of getting really hot and then not being able to kind of calm down, which was very much in line with my panic attacks. So a lot of the symptoms that I had when I would have panic attacks and really severe anxiety, I would still experience even when my brain was completely calm.
Mm.
And it's all because your autonomic nervous system is also in charge of that fight or flight that tends to happen when you are
Right.
having panic and anxiety. So it was a really interesting experience to have these symptoms even outside of getting over the phobia. And
Mm.
then trying to manage what it's like in day to day life whenever things feel a little bit worse than they usually do. And, it's kind of easy to get down when you feel these types of physical symptoms
Yeah.
often. But it was a really cool process because I'd gotten over the emetophobia, still noticed that, hey, I'm having some weird physical symptoms, like my hands would turn blue, my feet would turn blue, I couldn't touch hot water, just very strange stuff. And I get a diagnosis from the doctor and I go, oh, okay, so how can I take what I learned from the
Yeah.
program to now manage this?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that we really teach people is being able to tolerate discomfort,
Yeah.
being able to handle things that are beyond your control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I started to apply the program to the everyday stuff. And then even the really bad days where you've done all of your control skills, you've taken your medicine, you're taking care of your body, and things still aren't working right. And the ability to kind of manage the emotional response to setbacks like that. So it's been a
Yes.
really interesting and helpful journey to be
Yeah.
on post emetophobia.
Absolutely. So lots that you've learned there and lots that you've taken away from the program to help you.
Mhm,
But let's just rewind a little minute. So when you had emetophobia
mhm.
and the panic attacks you were describing there were due to the emetophobia, I take it.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So you're creating the panic attacks and having all of those physical symptoms of a panic attack, the shortness of breath, the dizziness, the sweating, all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
How did you know what was emetophobia and what was your nervous system disorder, or did you not at the time?
At the time, I absolutely didn't. So when I was
Okay.
having the symptoms when I had emetophobia, I just sort of assumed everything was anxiety. The only way I think I ever would have found out was because I got over the emetophobia.
Yeah.
And it was really really interesting because I remember taking my dogs for a walk, and I love walking my dogs. I love being
Mhm.
outside. And I was heading back towards my house. I was really close to the end of my walk, and I got so dizzy. Just nearly, everything kind of goes black and it comes
Yeah.
down. And my first thought was, well, why am I so anxious? And then I went, but I'm not anxious. There's
Right.
no unhelpful thoughts. I'm not worried about anything. I don't just get anxiety anymore. And it was really that moment where I went, oh, this isn't anxiety at this
Right.
point. But
Right.
had I never overcome the emetophobia, I think the lines would have been forever blurred. It would be
Yes.
very difficult to tell the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've not had anything like this, experienced anything myself, but I suppose if your body did create those physical symptoms, if you will, it would be very easy for you to attribute those symptoms to your unhelpful thoughts, because as we know, emetophobes have thousands upon thousands of unhelpful thoughts every day.
Hmm.
So if you suddenly feel dizzy or suddenly feel too hot or suddenly your heart starts racing,
Hmm.
because you are in the mindset of an emetophobe and you are in the mindset of everything is terrifying and there's threats all around me and something bad is
Yep.
going to happen and I'm going to get sick, it wouldn't take a big leap, would it, to
Hmm.
then attribute that symptom to something bad is happening to me, so therefore I must be sick, and then it would escalate further into a panic attack.
A
Am I right there?
1,000%. Yes, that's exactly how it always happened. So, looking back on it now, there were so many times where now I know, what bothers me, what
Yes.
environmental things kind of set my body off. Then I didn't realize it. I just thought everything made me anxious.
Yeah.
So now looking back at it, I can see times where it was very much just my nervous system not working and these things, physically that were happening.
Yeah.
But because of the way that I interpreted the physical sensation,
Yes.
I just spiraled with anxiety and I would obsess over it. What's happening? Why is my
Mm.
body doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And lots of like fear and dread and anxiety around it that would then lead into a metaphobia type panic for
Yeah.
the remainder of the day. No,
Yeah.
that's absolutely, it's very easy to do. It's
Okay.
being able to maintain perspective and really have the awareness of your inner voice that makes
Hmm.
all the difference in kind of discerning between what's just a physical symptom and then what's a physical symptom from anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a difficult line to draw, if you will. It's a difficult decision to make, or distinction. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a difficult
Yes.
distinction to make when you've never really understood how your mind works and therefore how you're creating anxiety.
Mhm.
Because a lot of emetophobes feel physically ill more than the majority of the population. That's just how emetophobia works, because we create these unhelpful bodily sensations for ourselves,
Mhm.
but we don't know how we're doing it or why we're doing it. And it's all to do with our thinking, it's all to do with our belief systems and how we're processing the world around us. But if you add in something like a medical, diagnosis on top, then it becomes more difficult to draw that distinction.
Absolutely.
However, I think the message here is that even if you have got a medical diagnosis and you are suffering with physical symptoms of a medical diagnosis, for example, Crohn's, or all sorts of different things,
Mhm.
any to be honest. We have people who've gone through the regular Thrive program with cancer and all sorts of different things.
Yep.
The skills that you pick up in the program, they help you to manage your symptoms. We're not saying that they will cure you. Thinking will not. You can't think your way out of cancer, right? Or think your way out of a
Hopefully
nervous
not.
system disorder, right? You can't
No.
do it.
Yep.
But what you can do is manage your thinking effectively, and therefore manage your symptoms. Is that
Yes.
what you found going from having this nervous system disorder pre-emetophobia to post-emetophobia?
1,000%. Whenever, like, I have some weird symptoms daily, but for the majority of it, I can function normally. I
Yeah.
take my medicine, I eat the way that I'm supposed to, I stay hydrated, I do all the things, I do all of my control skills to make sure
Yes.
that I'm as healthy as possible. But then there are times where I will be traveling and I'll get into a flare.
Mm.
And whenever a flare happens, it feels very much like the coming down from a panic attack. Like after you've
Mm.
had that panic attack and then your parasympathetic nervous system takes over, you start to relax and it just hits you with exhaustion. A
Yeah.
flare can feel like that for days on end and you're very brain foggy. And before the program, when I would get into these flares, it just felt like, well, what am I doing wrong? Why is this happening again? What do I
Mm-hmm.
need to do differently? What's wrong with my body? Why is nothing helping?
Mm-hmm.
Very black and white, very helpless, very catastrophic, very perfectionist type thinking. But now when it happens, I go, okay, so I now know that traveling and driving for long hours is likely going to set my nervous system on edge. I can prepare next time. I can take extra medication if I need to. I'll make sure that I rest in between. I'll prepare to just kind of feel down and tired for a couple days when I get back. And now I can bounce back as quickly as possible. So it really makes a big difference just in the impact that the illness has on your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I have a family member who is diagnosed with this as well and immediately ended up kind of going down a rabbit hole and kind of becoming consumed with it and just doesn't really get to live their life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between our experiences, the difference isn't symptoms, the difference is the way that we're living day to day lives.
Yeah.
And being able to respond in a really helpful way to something that's beyond your control is truly the most power that you can ever have in your life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anything about the way my nervous system works, but what I can do is take care of my body, take care of my brain, and just really minimize the impact.
Yes.
You really can't separate the impact that your anxiety and stress has on your physical health. And one of my favorite stories that I will share of a former client that I had. This
Mm.
client was a doctor and they had ulcerative colitis and they understood the impact that their anxiety had on their physical body.
Yeah.
And when I had met with them, they were very clearly ill, just very kind of pale, sunken in, just kind of
Mm.
down. When you look at somebody, you can tell that they don't feel well.
Yeah.
And they went through the program, got over their emetophobia, and were doing fantastic. We just sort of kind of kept in touch. And one day they appeared on my schedule. And I was so excited because I love getting those kind of face to face updates from my
Yes.
clients. I know you do too.
Yes.
And I opened the call, and it is not an exaggeration to say I nearly fell out of my chair because I was looking at this person that was like glowing and healthy and just, oh, they looked amazing.
Mm.
And I kind of just gestured wildly. I was like, what is this? What,
Yes.
what am I looking at? And they said, I just wanted to tell you in person, I am now a year in remission of my
Fabulous.
ulcerative colitis, medication free.
Wow.
So, about 6 months after going through the program, getting the anxiety under control, being able to take the medicine regularly without worrying that it was going to make them sick,
Yeah.
being able to eat consistently, they were able to heal their gut to the point that they were able to go off the medication and then
Nice.
maintain that progress for a year. And that is just one of the most encouraging stories to me. And that was such an inspiration for me to make sure that I'm still applying everything I know to
Mm.
my stuff
Yeah.
because our stress and anxiety has a very physical effect on our bodies.
Absolutely.
And being able to manage that is just the most helpful thing that you could do for any autoimmune condition, for any nervous system issue, for any type of GI issue. Being able to keep your body in a calm, well perspectived state
Yes.
is just, I mean, it's healing. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. What a lovely story. And it's, you don't even need to have a diagnosis, as we all know, when you have high levels of stress, high levels of anxiety, you
Yeah.
can't disconnect your mind and body. They're connected. They are one thing. So if you are continually chronically stressed
Mhm.
because you're having all of these scary, terrifying thoughts every day and creating this sense of dread every day, then your body will respond to that.
Absolutely.
Myself, I had chronic, excuse my language, diarrhea for nine
Yeah.
months,
Yeah.
right? Because, and I was diagnosed with IBS, and it was anxiety. It was all anxiety. There was nothing there medical. We explored all types of different medical things. I went on all types of different diets, the FODMAP diet, and all this kind of stuff to try and understand what was happening to my physical body. But at no point in that did I ever consider it was anxiety that could
Yeah.
create that. I was just thinking, no, there's something physically wrong with me, which is why so many people hear so many stories. Shannon, if you've not listened to Shannon's podcast, that's one to
Mhm.
listen to.
Yeah.
She went down the whole doctor's route, and I feel physically ill a lot of the time, and I've got
Mhm.
physical stomach pains. It was all driven by anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
And when you can manage your anxiety and stress, manage your mindset, manage your thinking effectively, then you are left with either no physical symptoms if it was
Mhm.
just driven by anxiety and stress, or the physical symptoms that you are diagnosed with, and you are able to manage those physical symptoms much more effectively, and your experience of those physical symptoms is much lessened, if that makes sense. Am I right there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to see because a lot of the dysautonomia stuff that is wrong with my body, there has been an increase in that since COVID. So
Right.
COVID can cause dysautonomia, autonomic nervous system dysfunction,
Ah.
POTS, lots of that kind of stuff. So there has been this uptick on social media of people kind of posting about it. And
Mm.
mine is the fun kind that is just my nervous system. This is just how my body is. It's not from COVID. But it is really cool to see, they're finding out so many more things about this. But when I see people posting about it on social media, I see people who it's their entire life.
Yeah.
It's everything about them. It is the first thing that's in their bio. It's everything that they talk about, and they talk about like needing IVs all the time and needing to do all of these different testing and all of this different medication, and it just consumes
Mm-hmm.
their vision. And it's not that you shouldn't try. You should do everything you can
Yeah.
to be as
Yeah.
healthy as possible.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like when you sit and obsess and worry about, well, what if I throw up? What if I throw up? What if I throw up? What if I go into a flare? What
Mm.
if my medicine doesn't work? What if I can't stay hydrated? What if I can't eat right? What if I can't X, Y, and Z? All you're doing is making your body just sit there and be tense, and you're
Mm-hmm.
going to make your physical symptoms worse.
Yeah.
Being able to learn how to manage that stuff is the best thing you can do for any illness.
Yes.
And to what you were talking about, there is a gut brain connection.
Mm.
Anybody who really likes to read the science behind this, I encourage them to look into that, because your
Mm-hmm.
brain and your gut are physically connected via the vagus nerve. And
Mm-hmm.
the vagus nerve is what is responsible for your autonomic nervous system. So, all the things that you don't think about. And if
Yes.
that nerve is consistently engaged because you are anxious, because you are in fight or flight, there are going to be physical repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
So, the balance is let me do everything I can to take care of my body, take care of whatever diagnosis I have, minimize the negative, minimize the impact, keep a really good mindset, and move on with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, if you're someone who has all of these physical symptoms, lots of dizziness, doesn't feel well, lots of chronic constant nausea, IBS
Mm-hmm.
type symptoms, and nothing is appearing to be wrong, then the best next step you could take is learning to manage your emotional response to it.
Yeah.
That way you can kind of truly start to see, well, what is mentally kind of impacting my physical symptoms and what is just physical symptoms by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know that when people say it's anxiety, they don't mean that, like, oh, you're just worrying yourself into this. What they mean is you are anxious to the point that there are physical repercussions
Mm-hmm.
of your anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Your IBS symptoms were very, very real,
Mm.
very annoying, very
Mm.
severe,
Mm.
interrupting.
Yep.
It's not that they were being made up by you.
Nope.
It's just the physical repercussions of constantly being anxious and really
Correct.
having that part of your nervous system engaged when it's not meant to be. Your body's
Yes.
not meant to just be like, oh
Mm.
no,
Yes.
all the time. There's
Yes.
supposed to be periods of rest. So it's really cool to be able to get the mindset where it needs to be so you can start picking apart what is physical and then what is physical from my
Yes.
mental state.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, it's important to, as we're talking, um, I'm just in the mindset of the people listening. It's important to rule out medical things because if there may be something medical wrong, so it's absolutely important to get yourself checked out by a medical doctor. But even if you're going through those checks and maybe they're not finding things, or you haven't got yourself checked out yet, get yourself checked out. But also, please understand that the impact your mindset has and the impact your thinking has on your physical symptoms, whether there is a medical condition underlying them or not, is massive. It's
Yeah.
huge. And it is something worth investing just as much energy and time into finding if there is something physically wrong with you. It's worth investing exactly the same amount of time into understanding how your mind works and how that's impacting your physical symptoms and your experience of those physical symptoms as well.
Absolutely. Because then once you know that you can kind of manage the mindset, manage the language, the perspective, all of that around your physical symptoms, it you feel a lot more confident in going to
Yeah.
the doctor and be like, okay, so something is actually wrong with me.
Yes.
For a couple of years after I recovered from emetophobia, I was just sort of thinking that, well, this is just left over from anxiety. My body's just still not working right until, I was washing my hands one day and it was warm and my hands just felt like they were on fire
Mm.
and they were tingling and burning and I couldn't touch them. I couldn't touch hot water, hands or feet at all for like 3 weeks. It
Right.
was the middle of January. It was very cold and I just wanted a hot shower.
Yeah.
And my husband looked at me. He's like, "That's not anxiety. Like, you
Yeah.
know that, right?" I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I know. I know. I'm going
Yeah.
to the doctor."
Yeah.
Because I had been to the doctor so many times for
Mm.
years for dizziness and fatigue and shortness of breath and really like poor circulation and stuff like that. And they would always say, "Oh, it's anxiety. It's anxiety." And it wasn't until I got over my anxiety that I
Yes.
could look at them and say, "No, it's not."
It's not.
And
Yes.
I will never, ever forget the moment. This was like 3-ish years ago. So this has been pretty recent when I was like, okay, so something is physically wrong with me. I'm not generally anxious. I don't have emetophobia. My mental health feels really, really solid. I'm still having these symptoms. So something's going on. And I was sent to another specialist and they were going through my file as they do. And she looked at me, she goes, "Well, this could all really be anxiety." And I was like, "Okay, so here's the thing about that. I
Yeah.
don't have anxiety."
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, it says here that you did." I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
I
past tense,
did.
I did. I was severely phobic. I've been over it now for years. I haven't had an anxiety attack also for years. I don't have daily anxiety."
Hmm.
I said, "Not only do I not have daily anxiety, but I'm not worried just in general because
Yeah.
if something in my life happens, I'm going to figure out how to deal with it."
Yep.
And I said that and I meant it.
Hmm.
And it was this moment of,
Mm.
"Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that feels good. That
Yeah.
feels really good." So being able to manage my anxiety and really work on that mindset, like you're
Hmm.
talking about, gave me the confidence to properly advocate for myself
Mm.
with my different doctors who, in fairness, they were looking at someone with an entire history
Yeah.
of
Yep.
anxiety
Yes. Yes.
in fairness. And it's worth noting that my neurologist, my treating neurologist right now, thinks that a lot of this might actually have been spurred on from the intensity of my and consistency of my panic attacks, that
Hmm.
essentially my nervous system doesn't know how to respond properly to things anymore, so it way overshoots or it way undershoots.
Right.
And one of the really cool things that we're doing is trying to learn how to retrain it.
Right.
So there's all of these extra things like control skills that I'm getting to learn and having the confidence in being able to try to take on these different challenges that they're giving me
Mm.
because I've worked on the mindset portion.
Yeah.
There's there is no downside to taking care of your mental health first and
No.
foremost. There
Absolutely.
just isn't.
Yeah.
It's only
Absolutely.
going to help you get where you need to be and manage anything
Definitely.
else that might come.
Definitely. Definitely. Now, for those people who are listening who may have potentially black and white thinking, perfectionist thinking, um, we are not talking here about toxic positivity. Okay, we're not
No.
talking here at all about going, it's fine. These symptoms are fine. I can handle them completely. They don't bother me at all. I'm super, super happy. I'm just as happy during a flare as I am outside of a flare.
Mm-mm.
Do you want to describe, if you will, the kind of mindset or the kind of thinking that you apply during a flare or during your physical symptoms, which isn't overly toxically positive because it's not overly toxically positive. It's coping with.
Yeah.
Do you want to just dive into that a little bit?
Absolutely. So whenever my flares come on, I just go, okay, that's what
Yeah,
this is. That's what's happening. I can acknowledge that this is a flare.
yeah,
Nothing I can do about it now. I'm already in it. So let's rest. I'm going to
yeah,
take care of myself. And I remind myself this isn't going to last. This is not my permanent state of being. My
yeah.
body knows how to heal itself. I know how to maintain a positive or neutral attitude. If I can't have a positive attitude,
Yes,
let's
yeah,
be neutral. And
yeah,
I just remind myself, all right, this is a reason to rest. I needed to sleep anyway. That's about
Yes.
as toxically positive as it gets. Is, you know what? I needed
Yes.
a nap anyway. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. But it's really a lot of the acknowledging what's going on. It's
Yeah.
the realistic appraisal of your current situation. I'm in a flare.
Yes.
Nothing I can do to get out of it other than
Yep.
take care of myself. So that's what I'm
Just
going
do
to do.
that. Yeah.
And that has a bit of a social anxiety component to it as well, because
Mhm.
sometimes if I'm in a flare, that means canceling plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually was in quite a flare, the worst flare I think I've ever been in. I think I might have rescheduled our recording this episode.
We did, because we jumped on and you were looking at me like this, and I was like, "Ooh, you've got some sort of chronic headache going on here."
Yes. Yeah, I had gone on a road trip and I ended up in a flare, and part of my flare that it involved a migraine. I rescheduled with you, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually rescheduled a trip to drive in to visit my family.
Right.
And not everyone is super understanding. You're lovely, obviously, but not everybody that you have to reschedule on or you have to change plans with is going to be understanding or empathetic
Mm-hmm.
to your situation. And
Mm-hmm.
part of taking care of yourself is also managing that social anxiety and going,
Correct.
I'm not going to push myself further
Yeah.
when I
Yep.
physically cannot do something just to make sure that I'm not feeling uncomfortable or worried about being judged.
Definitely.
It's going to have to be what it is, and I'm going to
Yes.
take care of myself. So, in a flare, I think with any chronic illness, I think it's important to acknowledge what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to where you have control,
Yes.
cope with what you can't control, make it a priority to be as helpful with your language as possible, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily positive, but like helpful with your language. I'm
Yeah.
going to rest. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take care of myself. I'll
Yes.
cancel plans if I have to. And if they don't understand, that is not something that is on me. That is something that's on them.
Yep.
And just sort of maintaining that it's temporary. It's
Yep.
just temporary. I don't have to like this. I just have to get through it kind of
Brilliant.
attitude. Yeah.
Brilliant. That has connected some dots in my brain, as obviously I don't think you can see on this podcast recording, but I'm 37 weeks pregnant as we're sat recording this, and I had morning sickness for the first, 20 weeks, something along those lines, and it's just returned in the past few weeks, just a treat at the end. It's lovely, and it's the same thing. It's not a chronic illness, obviously, but it's something physically
Mm-hmm.
happening in my body, and I can't do anything about it. It's just how it is. And what you were talking about there, and that kind of language you were using with yourself, that realistic appraisal. Okay, I've got morning sickness right now. Okay, I feel nauseous right now. It's the acceptance of it. It's
Yeah.
not trying to talk it away, talk it down, pretend it's not there. You're accepting that it's there, and you're going, okay, how do I cope with this as best as I possibly can? So everything that you just said was spot on. The only thing that I would add to it that helps me is to be unequivocally kind to myself when those things are happening, unequivocally. So it's very much to going, okay, feeling pretty rough right now. I'm accepting that. You're doing great. Just get yourself through it. Lie yourself down. Have sips of water. You can get through it. So you're talking to you, coaching yourself through it in a really kind, understanding, compassionate way.
Yeah.
And allowing and accepting yourself to be in that state without blowing it up, without magnifying it, without
Mm-hmm.
making the symptoms worse, by focusing on them, because you don't need to focus on them. By focusing on them, checking in, is it still there? Do I still feel sick? Can I do this? How can I get out of this quicker?
Mm-hmm.
You're actually making it bigger.
Yeah.
It's just settling in and accepting that that's where you're at, and managing how you'd respond to that. It's effectively coping skills, isn't it? You're coping with it. You're
Yeah.
leaning into your coping skills and using your control skills, because obviously having little bits of food here and there helps with the money thing. So that's what I'm going to do,
Yep.
and taking naps when I need to and when I can, because I've got a 2.5-year-old. I will take those naps. It's allowing yourself to learn the skills in order to be able to do that, because without the skills, I wouldn't have got pregnant in the first place.
Yeah.
With the emetophobia. But even if I, did for whatever reason, or if I felt nauseous, I would have just catastrophized, and I would have responded to it with complete panic and with worry and with dread and felt out of control.
Yeah.
It's building the skills to know that even if these uncomfortable things do happen, you're dealing with a chronic illness or morning sickness or whatever else it might be, these uncomfortable things, they do happen in life, that you will experience them at some stage. Some things, not all things, but you will experience them at some stage. And you want to know that you've got the skills to manage them. Yeah. And that you can cope with whatever your body throws at you, because sometimes it will throw things out of left field.
It will. And one of the things that I always tell my clients, and I think that this is the perfect place for this, is the people who have those really high desires for control. If you're a person who wants control, you should know that the most control that you will ever experience, the most power you will ever have in your life, is absolutely being able to emotionally respond and cope with something that's beyond your control.
Nice. Yeah.
Even the people who have the most control in the world, the most powerful people in the world, they're going to experience things that there's nothing they can do anything about. But when you know that you're going to be able to handle whatever's happening, whatever's thrown at you with confidence, nothing really feels scary anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You just roll with the punches of life. And it's really that combination of the control and coping. For a long time, this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I was kind of relying on a lot of my coping. And I was just sort of vibing with feeling kind of bad. And I was having a day where I could not get my heart rate down to a manageable level. So that's one of the things that happens. It was like 1:45 making my morning tea. I was like, come on, I am tired. I am winded. Just calm down. And I took a medication that I had been prescribed that I didn't really take very often because it's kind of a balance. It can drop my blood pressure too. And I was like, well, I'll take a little piece of it. And I felt so much better. And I have a smartwatch that reads a lot of really cool metrics and helps me manage everything. And I noticed all of my metrics improved significantly. And I just felt so much better. And I was like, oh, hold on. I've just been coping. I could maybe bring in those control skills a little bit, try some of this medicine again. And since I've been doing that, everything is so much better. So it's really like, it's the control, it's the coping, it's the managing your language, it's the being nice to yourself portion of all of this. But truly, like that, the most powerful feeling in the world is, okay, I drink salt water. That's what this is. It's gross, but it's what I need to do. And I take my medicine and I rest like I'm supposed to, but now I'm in a flare. Okay, I don't need to worry about it. I know how to handle this. And that kind of confidence in your ability to feel powerful in situations where you're not in control, nothing can top that. It is one of the best feelings ever. And you're just not terrified of life anymore when you really focus on building those specific skills. So you're never going to go wrong ever with making sure you have a robust mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would be your advice then as somebody who suffers with a chronic condition with lots of physical symptoms that overlap with symptoms of emetophobia and panic? What would be the advice to anybody out there who is suffering with a chronic condition, Crohn's disease, POTS, all these kind of things, who is reluctant to start the program or reluctant to seek anything other than medical help because they don't believe that it would work, because there's something physically wrong with them and therefore the help they need is medical? What would be your advice there?
I think the best advice I could give you would be to look into the studies that have been done over how anxiety and stress really impact your body. And I say that as someone who has this nervous system dysfunction. And I want to be clear, like what that correlation is. Your fight or flight response is a response of your autonomic nervous system. That's what doesn't work properly on me. So that's why I know a little bit about it, because that's the problem. So your vagus nerve controls that fight or flight response. It also controls your heart rate and your breathing and your digestion and your balance and your temperature regulation. You cannot constantly feel anxious and not expect to feel physical symptoms. So as much help as getting a diagnosis and doing the medical side is going to be, it is an equal amount of help to manage the thing that you can control to not exacerbate the symptoms. Because you're going to be able to make those symptoms worse. So
Mm-hmm.
why wouldn't you attack it from all fronts? And I think
Absolutely.
really digging into that tie, the correlation between the stress and anxiety response and your physical health will give you all of the evidence that you need to go, okay, I need to do both. I
Yes.
need the medical side and I need the mental health side, because that mental health side is not only going to help you deal with this illness, but anything else that comes at you in
Mm-hmm.
life. And that's something that it's just priceless.
Absolutely. Beautifully well said, and I don't need to say any more than that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Fabulous. You're very welcome. Thank you. It was brilliant. So, have you got anything else to say before we leave it there today? Because I think we've covered an awful lot of ground today. And hopefully it's been really, really helpful for anybody out there who has got a medical diagnosis that they are almost reluctant to start working on their emetophobia because of this medical condition and because they don't believe it will help them. Have you anything else to say before we end today, Sam?
Just don't hesitate to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the hesitation because it
Yeah.
almost feels like it invalidates the physical stuff going on, but it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it's only going to bolster your recovery.
Right.
And if I hadn't have gotten over my emetophobia, I don't think I would have ever truly found out what was going on with my body, and I would have
Mm-hmm.
never had answers, and I would
Mm.
have never been able to feel as good as I do now physically.
Right. Right.
So don't hesitate. Don't
Brilliant.
hesitate. You have nothing to lose by understanding your brain better and being able to have a little bit of control over your physical health.
Fabulous. Lovely. Brilliant. Well, we'll leave it there for today then. So thank you very much for joining us. That was really helpful, really interesting, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you for having me, as always.